media has exposed us to the dark side of immortality, to the point where it has gone from an obvious choice for, superpower debates to a questionable one. Fall of Avalon is a game that further elaborates on that darkness through their own rendition of King Arthur, but a more interesting character for me was another king who attempted Arthur's greatness but didn't quite succeed or fail. So for the sake of context, I will summarize the narrative drive that leads us to his kingdom. King Arthur conquered an island called Avalon because his people were dying to a disease called the Red Death. It's basically a disease that turns you into a monster with bad red skin, and the process of that transformation is extremely painful. The only way for him to fight this disease was to flee. However, Avalon was already inhabited by magical beings called the Four Dwellers. They control the mysterious powers of the island, named the Weirdness. Despite the Four Dwellers' formidable strength, Arthur and his gang managed to defeat them through unethical means, mainly presented by Merlin. And one of these was Arthur's immortality through resurrection. After Arthur had successfully conquered the island and died of natural causes, they would resurrect them every time they faced a problem too hard for them to handle. Merlin also made sure that the ritual of Arthur's resurrection excluded his humanity to make him more efficient. However, in the latest resurrection, we accidentally become the vessel of Arthur's soul, and he demands us to find all the fragments of his soul so he may regain his memories and physical form. To do this though, we must seek the powers of his Excalibur, shield, and crown. Our first stop is the Excalibur, which goes pretty smoothly, but upon our next interaction, Arthur's shield, nothing happens. So we seek the help of a druid named Maggot, who says we need a tablet that's been broken into two halves. One of the halves is in a kingdom that Maggot gives us a brief explanation of.
The druid half. It's at Sagremor's castle. I don't know how he got it. He wasn't the best sort. His castle sank a couple 100 years ago. Just grim stories left now. But my master etched his name in my mind. It has to be there. He wanted to be like Arthur. Made deals with witches. Druids too, maybe. They promised him eternal life. Then his kingdom vanished. Poof, gone.
Now, how interesting is that as a character concept? I personally have this fascination with characters who attempt to achieve someone else's greatness. Whether they fail or succeed, when these stories are well written, they're the kind of stories I cannot get enough of. Finding the location itself is quite an adventure, since both the game and the druid gives us really vague hints, so it leads me to actually search for this vanished kingdom. And when I finally found the entrance, I felt like a genuine adventurer. It made me all giddy that the entrance to this kingdom was hidden underwater in the middle of a vast land with absolutely no landmarks whatsoever. Now imagine my expectations when finding the entrance alone was this much fun. It's fair to say that the actual experience exceeded my expectations, because this for me was the best part of the game without a doubt, and one of my most memorable moments in recent games. The last time a game made me feel this way was Elden Ring, and I'm not saying it's as good as Elden Ring, but it did evoke similar feelings. With enough teasing, let's get into it. The first thing that captivated me were the bell tolls. It serves as a BGM for this area, but also as the sound of our arrival, in my opinion at least. It's ominous and feels as though we aren't supposed to be here, as if our arrival signifies the death of someone or something. As we walk across the bloody looking land, we come across two interesting characters and a lot of generic enemies. A merchant and the Mushroom Knight, Sir Stigender. They are the first to many interesting characters, and I will start with the merchant. He sees the knight as the lowest class of rats and constantly expresses malice towards him, which I can only assume is out of jealousy, because when you talk to the actual knight, he is full of grace and modesty.
Then I came here, for Sagremor, soon to be king, was about to ascend to the pantheon of demigods, and beside him stood the queen, as radiant as dawn, gentle as the light of spring. I swore to serve them until the end of time, yet she desired a true kingdom, regardless of the means. Next, there was the descent into the depths where we now find ourselves.
He is also a much more interesting character. He swore an oath to the queen that he'll carry all her sins. Little did he know at the time that despite her radiant and innocent appearance, he'd end up carrying an eternity of sin, as breaking his oath would also be considered a sin. So he is in this perpetual state where... I don't have to say that. However, the most interesting character and my favorite of this game resides in the castle. So let's take a look at King Sagremor's home. A man holding his own head is the one who welcomes us, the custodian, who's basically the butler of the castle and reveals a rather messed up dynamic of the royal couple and their servants. The servants must bear the burdens of the king and queen. For example, the butler has been punished for merely witnessing the king being unfaithful to the queen. He doesn't really specify what his punishment was, but either way, we already got a hint of this dynamic through the knight Stigender. Now, moving on to the castle itself, my initial impression of the castle's interior for some reason reminded me a lot of the Academy of Royal Lucaria. Not just in appearance, but the overall mood. It's magical in a melancholic way. Like, you find yourself admiring the surroundings, but you also notice the fragments of tragedy in almost every room and conversation. Speaking of conversations, I want to talk about the characters that reside here. Surprisingly, the king and queen are the least interesting by far, which is a shame because I expected so much more from them, especially King Sagremor. But I guess it also makes sense for them to focus on the effects of their misdeeds rather than their actual characters. But anyways, I digress. Let's start with the midwife. She is the second sister out of the three sisters that reside here. The eldest being the queen, her being the second, and the youngest being Claire. As her name suggests, she is in charge of taking care of the royal children, but she has grown attached enough to delude herself that they're her own children. And I don't know if this was the case in real life as well, but from the conversation that I had and the hints I've been given by the custodian and the midwife, it seems like she's not only in charge of taking care of the children, but she's also in charge of conceiving these royal children, which I don't know if it was a thing with actual midwives in history, but I just thought that was interesting. She says she needs help because her children are missing, and the children she's talking about here are Renault, Noah, and Hugo. So we decide to help and go searching for the children. And the first one I came across was Renault, the eldest of the children. And this dude is so cheeky and so spoiled, but also self-aware, so it creates this interesting personality. It's an odd feeling, really, in similar fashion to The Walking Dead's Negan.
Hot diggity dog! This place is magnificent.
Not comparing the two, just the emotions they both evoke as a consumer of the media. It's like, I know I should not like him, but cannot help admire his cheeky and witty personality. Like, he's genuinely funny, which was the same with Negan, right? Like, you know you should hate this guy for killing your favorite character in Glenn, but you just cannot help but like this dude because he's just that charming. It was the same kind of feeling with Renault. He's a character that I found to be the comical relief of this castle.
The firstborn of the king and queen, a proper little princeling, almost grown, though life has never tested me thanks to the comfort I was raised in, which is why I'm full of whims, why I think only of trivialities, why I'm just a gilded youth unable to appreciate what I have. I won't bother listing every one of my vices.
However, the comical atmosphere is sapped away when we go looking for the other children. We find the second child, Noah. The queen often bathed Noah, but even at such a young age, he was aware of his mother's mistreatment. She would deem him a bastard when she was in a bad mood and sing to him when she was in a good mood. One day, Noah complained the water was too hot when she was in a bad mood. In a furious reaction, she forced them underwater until the water turned cold for an eternity. That's dark. And Hugo was not even born before he was killed by the queen, but to be fair, I did not fully understand the darkness behind Hugo, but the bathing one, man, that's so dark. It just highlights to the cruelty of the queen and the neglection of the king. Anyways, we return these children to the midwife and she is elated, and it seems like her children are actually immortal in this world. At least seems like they cannot actually die, which I'm sure has to do with the perpetual state that the custodian was talking about. This is part of the reason why I consider this world an underworld. I would go as far as to say it's comparable to hell in the sense that they're in a state where they're all getting eternally punished, and also the characters in this world talk as if they are below surface, often referencing to the surface world as above. So yes, it's quite literally an underworld and comparable to hell in that sense. Now, lastly, the most interesting character by far is Claire. She is the youngest of the three sisters. When she witnessed her eldest sister, the queen, marry Sagremor, something grew inside of her. Envy. She wanted her own Sagremor, and she eventually met a man named Boris, whom she madly fell in love with, hoping to replicate her mistaken view of the king and queen's relationship. The custodian did hint at us that Boris never returned Claire's love back to her. When we ask Claire about it, she keeps rambling about sending letters to her beloved Boris. Her mind is clearly fully occupied to writing to Boris, and it's been the case for quite a while, hinted by the mountains of papers stacked on her table and the floating papers around her. This is where it gets really interesting. I thought that would be the end of it, but before heading out, I noticed a stack of books labeled as her dream. Upon interacted, we are transported literally into her dream. It's really cool that the game developers decided to convey this by transforming the game's texture rather than having an alternate version of Claire laying out everything for us. Claire has monologues here that are really stories she has crafted that reveal much about Boris and how she views herself and her sisters. It's better to hear from her directly because the voice actor does such a good job of conveying Claire as somebody who used to be gentle, who is still kind and gentle but has been corrupted.
Once upon a time, there lived a young maiden named Claire. She had two sisters, and together they resided in a resplendent castle within a land untouched by the cruelty of time. In this unchanging realm, there was neither the sorrow of endings nor the joy of beginnings. No sunrises, no sunsets, and no seasons to mark the days. Such was the design of the eldest sister, whose insatiable hunger for control bound the kingdom in eternal stillness. She hoarded love and devotion as a dragon hoards treasure. Yet for all her power, her heart remained empty, cursed to feel nothing for eternity. Claire, the youngest and gentlest of the sisters, moved quietly through the cold, unchanging halls. Her beauty was, too, untouched by age or hardship. Yet unlike her sisters, Claire possessed a secret, a flicker of defiance against the curse that gripped their land. Her heart remained free, protected by a force beyond even her eldest sister's reach. True love. This love bound her to a noble young man named Bors, whose memory was her light in the kingdom's shadow, though torn apart by dark magic. Claire refused to surrender to despair. She knew that giving up hope would mean losing herself entirely, succumbing to the same cold emptiness that claimed her sisters. So she endured, her heart steadfast in its belief that love could shatter even the darkest of spells, and that one day, somehow, she and Bors would reunite. Long ago, there lived a maiden named Claire, fair of face and gentle of heart, cursed by her cruel sister to remain imprisoned in a high tower, forbidden to step beyond its walls or look out of the window. She spent her days weaving a tapestry of the outside world, a world she could glimpse only through the reflection in an enchanted mirror. Yet Claire dared not lift her eyes from the loom, for the curse was absolute. If she ever stopped her weaving to gaze out the window herself, the fragile thread of her life would snap. One day, the mirror revealed a grand procession on the road below. Among them rode a knight clad in gleaming silver armor, a sapphire cape following behind him. His warm eyes and copper hair struck Claire's heart with longing. Unable to resist, she rose and stepped toward the window for a glimpse of the gallant knight. The moment she moved, a terrible pain gripped her chest and the mirror shattered. Claire, knowing the curse had claimed her, fled the tower. She reached the road just as the procession passed, grasped the knight's cape, and collapsed. Sir Bors turned a sudden tug, leapt from his horse and caught her. Her breath grew faint, and she whispered, "Do not grieve, for I am glad to have seen you, my knight." With those words, her spirit departed. Sir Bors wept bitterly, for never had he seen a maiden of such beauty and grace. His heart swelled with both joy and despair, for he knew he would never again love another as he loved the fair and cursed maiden, Claire. In the days of King Sagremor, there lived Bors, a wandering minstrel whose songs were famed for their beauty and sorrow. Among his melodies was one that bore the weight of his heart, the ballad of a lady named Claire. Claire, a noblewoman of unmatched grace, had been betrayed by her jealous sister, who sold her to a rival lord for power. Locked in a distant tower, her pleas for rescue went unheard. But Bors, who had once sung for her in her father's court and fallen deeply in love, learned of her plight and vowed to save her. He journeyed to the castle where she was held and sang beneath its mist-shrouded walls each night, hoping she might hear him. At last, a faint voice joined his song. Claire, her spirit unbroken despite her captivity, determined, Bors devised a daring plan. Each evening he sang in the castle hall, lulling the court into an enchanted trance. When the moment was right, he slipped away to free Claire. Together they fled through shadowed halls, hearts pounding with hope. But as they reached the forest edge, disaster struck. The alarm was raised, and the guards gave chase. Armed only with his lute, Bors faced the guards to protect Claire. In the struggle, he was struck down, his body falling beside his broken lute. Claire was dragged back to the castle, her heart forever bound to the minstrel who had died for her. It was the height of summer when young Bors first laid eyes on the maiden of his heart, working in the fields, his skin bronzed by the sun. He paused as the sound of hooves drew near. A lone maiden approached, her hair shimmering like spun gold, her cheeks rosy and her waist snugly drawn into a spring green corset. While the other peasants bowed their heads, Bors stared unabashedly. Sensing his gaze, the maiden turned sharply, startling her steed. The horse reared and she tumbled from the saddle, straight into Bors's waiting arms. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the maiden felt herself lost. A warmth bloomed upon her cheeks, but a deep foreboding stirred in her stomach, for she knew there would never be another man who could claim her heart so completely. From that day forward, she rode past the fields daily, offering Bors water and sharing quiet moments beneath the shade of a willow tree. Days stretched into nights, and the two surrendered to love. But one day, as the maiden passed the field, her beloved Bors was nowhere to be found. She waited beneath the willow until darkness fell and reluctantly returned to the castle. The next day, and the one after that, she returned. But Bors never did. Summer turned to autumn, and the maiden ceased her rides. She withdrew into the shadowed stillness of her tower, her heart heavy with unending sorrow. Unbeknownst to her, Bors's bones lay bleached and brittle beneath the sun, hidden in the very field where their love had bloomed. For in Sagremor's kingdom, no crime was graver nor punishment swifter than love.
As you may have guessed by now, she met Bors inside of her own stories, so she never actually managed to find her own Sagremor. I cannot help but feel such deep sadness for her because Bors does exist in her own way, but their love always ends in tragedy according to her own stories, right? Because deep down she knows her love will never come true because it doesn't actually exist. And when you talk to her about her dreams, she kind of lights up, and it takes her mind away from writing letters to Bors for a short little while. She even forgets who she's writing to, what she's currently doing, because it's been such a long time. It's become autonomous for her to be writing these letters to Bors, right? And seemingly when we leave her, she's gonna keep on doing that for an eternity, writing to a person that she thinks exists but doesn't. And that's just so sad. She's gonna be doing that for an eternity, you know. We're not talking about 3-5 years here. It's thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years. As long as, you know, you don't make a certain choice that turns all of them into a mushroom hive mind. But that's for later. And finally, the custodian tells us we are ready to see the king and queen. And this may have been quite obvious for a lot of you. It was very obvious for me. The custodian reveals that these three sisters are supposed to be the druids who helped King Sagremor turn immortal. It kind of feels like the game tries to convey this to us as a plot twist, but it really wasn't. It was super obvious from the beginning. Now, the king and queen are pretty basic, to be honest, so I'm not going to bother going into full detail. But King Sagremor wanted to be like King Arthur, and the three druids granted him his wish in monkey's paw style. And also the eldest of the three sisters had malicious intent from the beginning, and now has reached a point where she is the real ruler of this kingdom. The most interesting part about them is honestly their loot. They could have done a better job regarding the king, honestly, but maybe I missed something, because during my first playthrough I killed him for his loot, and during my second playthrough I made a choice that I regret so much. I let the mushroom hive mind take over this kingdom. So yeah, maybe like if you let him live and you come back later in the game, maybe he has like more interactions. So if you know anything about that, let me know in the comments. Either way, I wanted to end this video by saying it's so rare for a modern game to design an area this compelling and full of charming characters that's going to be temporary. These are just side characters that are designed to be thrown away. We don't need to interact with them later. They're not canon to us after this first interaction, but they've done this job where it's so memorable. It was such a memorable experience for me. All I can hope is that I have successfully expressed how cool and magical and unique this area feels. and made you even a bit curious about the game. So I truly recommend for you to pick up this game if you're into these kind of RPGs. This section of the game might have been my favorite part, but there is a lot of stuff in this game, like a lot of side quests. So maybe for you it's gonna be something else, but for me this was definitely the most memorable, not just in this game but just in gaming in general in recent times.